Welcome to Tidbit Talkin. This is a series that consists of spewing out assorted thoughts which arose from somebody who thinks too much, taking in, and generally loving various entertainment media by the boatload. These tidbits may be mini theories, observations, or simply jokes. Hopefully people will find them entertaining or at least interesting. And who knows, maybe they'll lead to others looking at what amuses them in different ways than before. Also, bear in mind that everything blabbed about in these videos comes from the perspective of somebody who's experienced every main story bit connected with whatever works currently being gone over. So spoilers are a definite. However, other works set in a shared continuity will typically solely be referenced in a way that only makes sense to anybody who's also experienced those ones fully up until their same time occurring points. Sort of a coded nod kind of deal. So, while things will be more fun for viewers who've indulged with an entire universe's works, nobody who has yet to do so will get non-experienced events spoiled. Now, with all of that out of the way, here we go. Fast Lane. The notes from Dawn that helped Harry learn how to make symbol-stored speed-stealing steel, when coupled with his turtle brain research, were probably focused on what information was gathered from studying Farouk's remains back in Season 1. Tar Pit takes quite a long time to emerge after getting his powers. This is likely because his extreme danger-induced superpower-granting transformation started out with his cells scattered all throughout that huge tar pile. Said substance is of course extremely difficult to move within, even if one can survive contact with it. So, pulling himself back together before developing metamuscle memory simply took ludicrously long. Harry is worried and annoyed by Barry speed reading everything in sight because he doesn't want his friend/potential betrayal target accidentally glimpsing certain power pilfering plans while doing so. Dawn's other scribblings that helped inspire Mr. Allen discover a way to breach block may have been about sealing singularities if one had somehow showed up before he went back home. Hunter is not around in his J disguise this episode because he's hanging back to see if there are any noticeable side effects from injecting Barry's stolen speed. Barry's comments about suit problems being behind his sudden supremely small speed shortage probably stem from wondering if there's some more tech, like a defibrillator he's not aware of, that could have recently started malfunctioning. Helping Harry and forgiving him being an intense passion generator for Barry might be because saving Earth 1 Wells from Dawn is the Scarlet Speedster's second most fantasized about time travel moment right after mom death prevention. Welcome to Earth 2. The Earths Barry witnesses while running to number 2 are all ones that will have some kind of interaction with his universe in the near future. Perhaps Barry is kinda glimpsing thoughts and memories of the Speed Force. An omnipresent entity that's connected to all of time and space at once would have crazy anachronistic mind insights like that. Breach destabilization may have not been caused by that energy surge hoopla Hunter uttered. Rather, Cisco being all worried while dimension diving may have resulted in a subconscious vibe power usage that messed with the portal's energy and whatnot. The Time Remnant masquerading as Jay Garrick's primary problem with that world warp wrecking likely has to do with him no longer being capable of going home and receiving memory updates from his Zoom costume wearing past self. At first glance, things appear as if the DCTV universe's Earth 2 is actually its version of what comics commonly call number 3. That being a world where moralities are completely reversed. However, if that were the case, then people like Barry, Iris, Joe, and Harry would be quite super villainy too. What's likely truly up with this universe is that people's balance of selfishness versus selflessness has been flipped around. Such a dimensional theme would allow for drastic differences between folks that lead some to crime while still leaving others as merely unrecognizably sorta jerkish but otherwise mostly righteous. This idea, of course, gets a fair bit of support from the show itself with Joe 2's little mini speech about selfish Bartholomew. Anyway, a rundown of some of this supposed me versus them importance shifting. Leonard Snart becomes Central City's mayor because helping out would be his core personality trait, while stealing is what he'd partake in with much pushing from others. Given that his family and friends would be likewise flipped around personal interest-wise, it's probable that nobody egged him on towards theft beyond maybe shoplifting once or twice as a kid. Lounge singer Joe doesn't have the putting one's own feelings aside capacity his Earth 1 counterpart possesses to such a degree that he can't see how performing police work truly fulfills Iris 2, and thus can never be happy proud for her. However, he still cares enough to not truly stay mad at his daughter forever, hence his relentless disdain getting Barry aimed instead. Likewise, Second Earth Mr. Allen's all about meanness, which of course is actually pointed out by his world's Mr. West, is demonstrated by him not giving enough craps about father-in-law stemming emotions to compromise and or clear the air. Secondary Iris is extra cocky and probably never considered journalism as a serious career choice because possessing an action hero image outweighs the extra people she might be able to help with world-reaching articles and whatnot. Harry, as opposed to his peppy jean jacket-loving Earth 1 counterpart, is of course more interested in making a particle accelerator for achievement gaining rather than everyone accessible science advancing. His more me mindset is also what would make him think pumping all that energy underground wouldn't still be risky. He'd simply never take others' input into account if he got warned. Granted, Thawne as Wells didn't listen to anybody else either, but he wanted a disaster. It wasn't just him thinking nobody else is smart enough to matter. This thought deal also nicely explains why people like Cowardly Barry 2 and Sorta Moody Harry change and grow, something that would never happen with the comics crime syndicate ruled Earth 3. Plus, this situation does leave a possibility open for Earth 1 Hunter Zalman to become a villain who thinks he's helping out those he hurts while still maintaining the writer's intended whole contrasting mirror world theme. Hunter probably killed the supposedly more selfless Earth 2 Geomancer because he didn't want somebody collapsing his cliff-embedded lair. Stein of Earth 2 isn't self-concerned enough to resist the more domineering Ronald Raymond after they first fused. This is in light but still notable contrast to his World 1 self, who, while generally quite the participant in frequent others helping, would often get so work-absorbed that he'd totally ignore his loved ones. On that note, firestorm forming can still happen instead of a tokamak situation like with Mr. Hewitt, even though one half is all nobody else caring, just like he was, because this duo involves somebody who sees enslaving another person as too enjoyable to pass up. In particular, Ruthless Ronnie may have wanted to develop a way of siphoning knowledge from Martin's ensnared brain so he could discover more creative torture methods. Much transmutation abuse would have been involved. Reverb has probably vibed several different ways Zoom can be defeated, including ones that involve a certain Speed Force connection pausing ability getting utilized, hence his confidence when asking Cisco for help. Speaking of which, his need for assistance may have merely been him not being able to hold off more loyal minions like Black Siren while making an attempt at agile aggressor assassination. Escape from Earth 2. There probably was an Earth 1 time vault in the history that existed before Thawne body-jacked Harrison. It may have been meant as a shelter for all present Star Lab employees in case an accelerator failure occurred, much like Harry's shelf-filled Gideon-free one. The Velocity 9 isn't what helps heal Jay's condition. It's adapting to Barry's stolen Speed Force. Zoom might think Cisco would make a good replacement for Reverb because unlike the latter, he'd be too much of a pushover to attempt a coup. Zoom, of course, keeps real Jay alive solely in case he somehow figures out how to take the Swift Senior's speed as well. Barry's initial incompetence with Earth 2 phasing is probably because his vibrating didn't match what said universe demands, not specifically that it wasn't high enough. A lower one would have likely also been tricky. After all, if it's only progressively greater atomic shaky rates that are problematic, then there'd be lots of universes where speedsters couldn't do anything whatsoever, which doesn't seem so sense-making given their power sources, apparent omnipotence, and whatnot. Callback time! Thawne's natural frequency of air, common comment from back in Season 1 was likely meant to mask a presumably truly accurate, but also even more speedster power experience revealing statement somewhere along the lines of, in order to phase, you must vibrate at a frequency adjacent to your current universes. Zolman was most likely planning for Jay to rescue everybody trapped on Earth 2 from Zoom. That way, he could instill a terrifying image of his true self within the team, while simultaneously making his fake one look good enough to oversee Barry's training until a cure-granting level of speed got amassed. King Shark. Harry's warning to Cisco and Barry concerning telling others about their Earth 2 ordeals may have been triggered by his own experience of reading Dawn Wells' notes while working on Zoom's speed-robbing device. After all, he likely saw a bit of himself in the guy who got a bit into his other self and subsequently became worried that less genius-y folks would get influenced even more by their doppelgangers. King Shark busting out more or less immediately after Jay is killed might be because there being only one speedster electrical signal to keep track of has granted him enough focus for breakout enabling strength producing willpower gathering. On a related note, King Shark may not be able to notice a speedster in Star Labs because there's too much fancy electricity-filled tech in the place for him to hone in on one particular shocking scent. King Shark makes a remark to Barry along the lines of, "After I kill you, I'm gonna kill them." This is remarkably similar to what Vaughn menacingly said to him in the Season 1 finale after he ruined all of that guy's careful scheming. Said situation similarity is what probably got Barry fired up enough to both defeat King Shark via electrical cyclone generation and perform Zoom inevitable defeat focused motivational speeching near the episode's end. Trajectory. Harry's meta-detecting watch likely has that recording option so witnesses can provide on-the-spot descriptions of Zoom's goons while observing their crimes. Eliza's delayed debut as Trajectory likely boils down to two reasons. 1. Dr. Harmon had to spend much time studying other speedsters' garbs so she could make her own friction-proof suit. 2. Eliza and her alter, who apparently existed before the super speed halving, as suggested by that comment of, Caitlin shouldn't have made figuring it out so easy for us, probably spent much time arguing about whether to be heroic or hedonistic. Trajectory knowing how the pipeline cells work may be because she took the time to read absolutely everything stored within Starlab's computers. Alternatively, she knows how to operate their fancy makeshift prison because Mercury Labs was competitively developing meta-dampening tech for interested law enforcement organizations and the like before Cisco got Iron Heights hooked up. Caitlin probably created that micro-tracer deal she slipped into Trajectory's syringe because Team Flash needed a way to keep track of pipeline escapees like Dr. Light and Peekaboo. It was likely actually intended to be hidden inside their meals, though. Cisco may not have been able to vibe Jay's true identity as Zoom before this point because his powers simply weren't capable of perceiving all the shenanigans a frequent multiverse-hopping serial killer who constantly cloned himself could get up to. Perhaps Mr. Ramon got the premonition beefiness he needed from being near that haywire breach back in Escape from Earth 2. Someone such as Trajectory, who only has speedster powers because of drugs like V9, probably possesses much greater velocity than other incredible fastness newbies because she doesn't fuel energy back into the Speed Force since there's no true connection present. The blue coloring of Speedy People Lightning might be specifically caused by cells getting destroyed after being forced to operate at rates they can't handle. Sorta like how certain chemicals getting burned makes funky colored smoke sometimes. On a related note, Eliza died particularly quickly from her velocity usage because she didn't have any natural speed force in her system to counteract the overexertion causing fake stuff. Flashback. Dawn being able to spot a past self-replacing Barry wouldn't just be because he stalked this version of Mr. Allen for 15 long years. Rather, his experience with so many other era-hopping versions of the Flash would also give him an edge when it comes to temporally displaced nemesis spotting. Plus, the fact that Thawne himself is also pretending to be a past someone probably makes seeing such things easier too. Time Wraith's main issue seems to be with two home universe sharing versions of the same speedster from different time periods being present simultaneously. They probably disapprove of such scenarios because those history hacking humans could potentially cause tremendous timeline damage via both conversing with their current counterparts and altering their own behavior even further once new memories start emerging or whatever. Given that Zoom became powerful enough to cross dimensions shortly after first gaining speed, he likely also achieved a strength level that makes it possible for him to kill Time Wraiths somehow. There's probably much vibration involved. Of course, if Zolman were heavily injured, he likely wouldn't be able to stop any of the things. If somehow Hunter still can't off the historical ghost himself, he probably relies on Black Siren and Reverb to handle them. Time Wraiths could be the remains of speedsters from deleted timelines lashing out against those who alter history too much. In fact, that ghosting, seen on occasion, could be when speedsters first start getting furious spirit converted, particularly if they are aware of their home era getting erased, as seems to be the case with Season 1's first Phantom Barry. Thawne's suspicion really kicking into high gear after Barry shows off an incomplete speed equation, maybe because Future Flash actually created the original one. Confirmation of what Eobard believed to be going on would have of course came after that alert went off and he saw the Time Wraith upon checking his CCPD cameras. The fact that Thawne seems to completely buy Barry's bull about going back so he could learn how somebody can stop a singularity is pretty strong evidence for that tidbit in Part 2 about not just people being deleted history remnants, but the timelines themselves too. Those Time Wraiths seem rather eager to attack Cisco. This is probably because they sense his dormant vibe powers and perceive him as the biggest threat. His potential ability to interrupt Speed Force connections might even be capable of killing them outright rather easily. The Speed Force might have decided to grant Time Wraiths super strength just in case their targets had help from somebody like a Kryptonian or whatever. Tachyon enhancement probably isn't truly increasing the Flash's speed. Rather, what it's likely doing is providing a sort of physical therapy for Barry that reverses all the junk stifling his speed growth, like breaches being open all around. That's why utilizing those wacky superluminal particles does wonders at first, but practically nothing later. Mr. Allen has simply recovered by that point. Endings are a pain, but all of you are fantastic. See ya.